"I don't want to be alone," said the Apache girl, and the rancher let her stay. All she knew was that she could not go back. Going back meant feeling unseen again. Going back meant silence, loss, and a loneliness that felt heavier than the long walk she had taken. She was Apache, born into a world of strong traditions and close families. Once, her life had been full of voices, warmth, and stories told near the fire at night. But things had changed. Death and separation had slowly taken pieces of her life away. First, a sickness took her mother. Later, her father left with another group to find work and never returned. Relatives who were once kind became distant, busy with their own struggles. No one was cruel to her, but no one truly listened either. She became the quiet shadow that followed others, always present but never noticed. One morning, after another night of crying quietly so no one would hear, she made a decision she did not fully understand. She packed nothing. She told no one. She simply walked away, following the open land until her legs shook and her heart felt empty. She did not know where she was going. She only knew she did not want to be alone anymore, even if being alone was exactly what she was choosing in that moment. By late afternoon, she saw fences and open fields stretching far into the distance. Animals grazed calmly, unaware of her presence. The smell of water and dry grass filled the air. She followed the sound of a slow-moving windmill until she reached a small area with a trough filled with water. Her reflection stared back at her from the surface. She barely recognized herself. Her eyes looked older than her years. She knelt down and drank carefully, afraid someone might suddenly appear and chase her away. After drinking, she stayed there, unsure of what to do next. She felt too tired to move and too scared to sleep. The land was quiet, but it was a different kind of quiet than the one she knew. This quiet felt watched, like the land belonged to someone who cared for it. That someone noticed her not long after. The rancher had lived alone for many years. His wife had died young, leaving behind a silence that settled deep into the walls of his house. He had no children, no close family nearby, and very few reasons to speak more than necessary. His days were simple. He woke early, worked until his body ached, and rested when the sun went down. The routine kept him steady, but it did not fill the empty spaces inside him. When he went out to check the animals that evening, something felt different. One of the horses kept glancing toward the water trough, restless. The rancher followed the horse's gaze and saw a small figure crouched near the water. At first, he thought it might be an animal. Then the figure moved and he realized it was a child. He stopped walking. His first instinct was caution. People did not simply appear on his land, especially not children. He cleared his throat softly and took a step closer. The girl froze. Her shoulders tensed and she looked like she might run. "It's all right," he said slowly, keeping his voice calm. "I won't hurt you." This was a child who had been alone for too long. "Are you lost?" he asked. She shook her head just once. "Do you know where you are?" That was what people would say he should do. "Your family must be worried," he said gently. That was when she finally looked up at him. Her eyes were dark and tired, but there was something strong in them too. When she spoke, her voice was quiet but clear. "I don't want to be alone," she said. The words were simple, but they struck him harder than he expected. For a moment, he could not speak. He heard his own voice from years ago, standing in an empty house after his wife's passing, saying something very similar to the walls. He sat down on a nearby fence post, keeping a respectful distance. "Being alone can feel heavy," he said after a pause. She nodded, hugging her knees. "It feels like I don't exist." He was a man who worked with land and animals, not feelings, and lost children. Yet he could not ignore what he saw in front of him. "You can rest here for a bit," he said carefully. "Just for now." She ate slowly, as if afraid the food might disappear if she rushed. He watched her quietly, noticing how she relaxed little by little. She did not smile, but her shoulders lowered and her breathing became steady. As the sky darkened, the rancher felt the weight of his decision pressing on him. He knew this was not simple. People would talk. Questions would come. But for the first time in a long while, his quiet life had been interrupted by something real and human. When he showed her the small room where she could sleep, she hesitated at the doorway. "Just for tonight," he reminded her. She nodded. "Thank you." He told himself he would do the right thing in the morning. Yet deep down, he already knew that something had changed the moment she spoke those words by the water. Far away, the girl slept more peacefully than she had in a long time. For the first time since she walked away, she did not feel invisible. She did not know what tomorrow would bring, but for this one night, she was not alone. Morning arrived slowly on the ranch. The first light touched the fields, turning the dry grass a soft gold. Birds moved from fence to fence, and the windmill creaked gently as it pulled water from the ground. Inside the small house, the rancher woke earlier than usual. He lay still for a moment, listening. Then he remembered the girl sleeping in the next room. He sat up, feeling a strange mix of worry and responsibility. He had told himself it was only for one night, yet the thought of sending her away made his chest feel tight. He pushed those thoughts aside and began his usual routine. He washed his face, pulled on his boots, and stepped outside to start the day. When he returned to the house with fresh water, the girl was already awake. She stood near the window, looking out at the open land as if trying to understand it. When she heard him, she turned quickly, unsure if she was still welcome. "Good morning," he said gently. She nodded. "Good morning. It's going to be a long day." He expected the girl to stay behind, but when he turned, he saw her standing a few steps away, waiting. He pointed toward the barn. "You can walk with me if you want." When he carried feed, she reached for a smaller bucket without being asked. He noticed but did not comment. It felt natural, like she understood the rhythm of the place. As the hours passed, she began to relax. She asked small questions about the animals and the land. He answered simply, not pushing her to speak more than she wanted. The ranch became quieter but also fuller, as if her presence added something that had been missing. By midday, the sun was high and the heat settled in. They sat under the shade of a large tree to rest. The rancher drank water and wiped his face. The girl stared at the ground, drawing shapes in the dirt with a stick. "Do you miss your family?" he asked carefully. She was silent for a long time. Then she said, "I miss how things used to be." He had learned long ago that some pain only needed space to be heard. As the day went on, a neighbor rode past the fence and stopped. The man looked from the rancher to the girl and frowned. "Didn't know you had company," he said. The rancher felt his stomach tighten. "She's just resting," he replied. The neighbor nodded slowly, clearly curious. "You know people will talk. But tonight you're safe here." People from nearby land began to ask questions. Some were concerned, others were suspicious. A few warned the rancher that keeping her could bring trouble. They reminded him of rules and expectations. At night, the rancher sat alone at the table thinking. He had always followed the rules. He had lived quietly, never asking much from the world. Now, without planning to, he had stepped into something complicated. One evening, he found the girl sitting on the porch, staring at the stars. He joined her. "Do you feel like you belong here?" he asked. She thought for a moment. "I feel like I can breathe." But as he watched the girl grow stronger each day, he also knew that sending her away without care would break something fragile inside her. The ranch was no longer just land and animals. It had become a place of quiet healing, even as the world outside pressed closer. The change did not happen all at once. It came quietly, like the slow turning of the seasons. The girl no longer walked with her head down all the time. She began to look people in the eye, even if only for a second. Her voice grew steadier. Small things made her smile, like the sound of the horses or the way the sky turned orange in the evening. The rancher noticed everything, even when he pretended not to. He saw how she waited for him to start work before joining in, how she listened carefully to every instruction, how she checked his face to see if she had done something right. He realized she was not just helping. She was building a sense of safety, piece by piece. But safety is fragile when the world does not agree with it. One afternoon, two men arrived on horseback. They were not neighbors this time. Their clothes were neat, their voices firm. They asked questions the rancher had been expecting but hoping to avoid. "We've heard there's a young girl staying here," one of them said. The rancher nodded. "She's with me." "She didn't come here to cause trouble," the rancher said calmly. "She needed a place to rest. No one is taking you anywhere today." The rancher gently told her to slow down, but she only nodded and kept going. Days passed and pressure grew. People came by more often. Some spoke kindly, suggesting solutions. Others spoke sharply, warning him that his choices could cost him his land and his reputation. "You're a good man," one neighbor told him. "Don't ruin your life over this." Inside, he was fighting a battle he had never expected. For years, he had lived carefully, keeping his heart guarded. Now he found himself standing between a frightened child and a world that preferred order over understanding. One evening, after a long day, the girl finally broke. She sat on the steps and cried, covering her face with her hands. The sound was quiet but full of pain. "I tried to be strong," she said between breaths. "I tried to belong." The next visit came sooner than expected. More people arrived, their expressions serious. They spoke of arrangements, of what was proper, of rules that had been followed for generations. The rancher stood firm. "She's not an object to be moved," he said. "She's a person." That night the rancher did not sleep. He walked the land, thinking about his past, about the loneliness he had accepted as normal. He realized that helping the girl had forced him to face his own fear of loss. Letting her go would be easier. Standing up would hurt. But some things, once seen, cannot be unseen. The next morning he made his decision. He spoke clearly and calmly to everyone who came. He did not shout. He did not threaten. He simply explained that the girl's well-being mattered more than convenience. He asked for time. He asked for understanding. He asked for a solution that did not involve force. It was not a victory, but it was not a defeat either. The girl sensed the shift. "You're not giving up," she said. "No," he replied. "I'm not." Part 3 ends with the understanding that the hardest moments were still ahead, but neither of them was facing them alone anymore. The days that followed felt heavy, but they also felt honest. There were no more surprises. Everyone knew the situation now, and everyone had an opinion. The rancher woke each morning knowing that a final decision was coming. The girl felt it too. Even when she laughed or worked, there was a quiet understanding between them that change was near. One afternoon, a small group arrived again, but this time their voices were calmer. They spoke about plans, about finding a place where the girl could be supported without fear or force. They spoke about balance, about care instead of control. The rancher listened closely. He asked questions. He did not argue. He only repeated one thing again and again, that the girl's wishes and safety mattered. When they finished speaking, they turned to the girl. For a moment she felt the old fear return. But then she felt the rancher's presence beside her, steady and quiet. "What do you want?" one of them asked her. Her voice trembled at first, but then it grew stronger. "I don't want to disappear again," she said. "I want to feel seen." She would move slowly toward a place where she could learn, grow, and stay connected to her people, while still being supported by those who understood her pain. The rancher would remain part of her life, not as an owner or a rescuer, but as someone she trusted. When the decision was shared, the girl felt many things at once. Relief came first, then sadness. Change, even gentle change, still hurt. That evening she and the rancher sat outside as the sun went down, just like they had many times before. "So this is goodbye," she said quietly. He shook his head. "No, this is different." The days leading up to her departure passed slowly. She walked the land as if memorizing it. She touched the fence posts, watched the animals, listened to the wind. The ranch had become more than a place to her. It had been a pause, a breath, a chance to feel safe again. On her last morning there, she woke early. The rancher was already outside waiting. They did not say much. Words felt too small. Before she left, she turned to him. "You didn't let me be alone," she said. He smiled gently. "Neither did you." The work was the same, the land unchanged, yet something inside him had shifted. Loneliness no longer felt like a permanent state. It felt like something that could be challenged. Weeks passed, then months. Letters arrived from time to time, short notes at first, then longer ones. The girl wrote about what she was learning, about friends she was making, about days that were hard and days that were good. She wrote honestly, without hiding her fears or her hopes. The rancher wrote back, sharing small stories about the land, the animals, and the changing seasons. He did not give advice unless she asked. He simply stayed present. Years later, she returned to visit. She was taller, more confident, her eyes brighter. When she stepped onto the ranch, it felt familiar but also new. "You kept it the same," she said. "So did you," he replied. They walked together, talking easily. There was no need to explain the past. It lived quietly between them, not as pain but as proof. When she left again, it did not hurt the same way. They both knew that being connected did not require staying in one place. The ranch continued to stand, open and patient. And somewhere beyond it, a young woman carried with her the knowledge that one kind choice had changed the shape of her life. She had asked not to be alone, and she never truly was again.